Good morning and happy Tuesday on the late night, early morning train. Happy Tuesday, happy Tuesday, happy Tuesday. This will be my last broadcast for the night, even though it's morning here, but it may be night where you are. So, greetings to everyone who may be coming in from Facebook or YouTube, or who's ever out there that is still up. And I know I need to get my butt into bed, but I had two that I really needed to get done. So I changed one for later on tonight, and I'm going to knock this one out now, which is an interesting story, but I'm not surprised. And it's in the area of sports, football, the NFL, which is my favorite. And as the title reads, the Washington Commanders owner, which they list in the article written by patch.com, again, patch.com, and the link is in the description, or at least it should be. P as in Paul, A as in Apple, T as in Tom, C as in cat, H as in Harry.com, patch.com. And this was last updated around 8 o'clock p.m. on this past Monday, which was the 27th. And basically the story headline reads, the owner, but as I said further down in the story, he's considered a co-owner, Daniel Snyder, of the newly, as of last year, named Washington Commanders, who was formerly named the Washington football team, who had been named the Redskins for years. However, as anyone familiar with the NFL and the Washington football team, that name has been a center of controversy, as many thought the name to be offensive to Native Americans. So, after a long, lengthy bout, the name was actually changed temporarily to the Washington football team, and the unveiling of the new name was this year, I believe, and the Washington football team is now currently named, or the unveiling of the name is the Washington Commanders. Now, being a DC, Maryland native myself, I'm not really happy about that name. No particular reason. I just don't like it. I think it could have been a little bit more creative, but that's the name they chose, and that's what Washington fans have to live with. Now, as far as the story goes, apparently Daniel Snyder was issued a subpoena to basically answer questions that had surfaced around the mistreatment of women in the workplace. And if you've been following Washington for maybe at least the past 5 or 6 years, you would know that the organization has been swirling with rumors, with scandal. The team had often been called quarterback killers, not literally, but they have been accused of being the cause of many quarterbacks not having a flourishing career. Now, I'm not really sure how accurate that statement would be, but again, being a native Washingtonian, I can say for sure that the quarterback door has been a revolving door. There have been several quarterbacks that have come, that have gone quickly, some due to injury, some that just not foot the bill, if you will. Either there was a non-gelling with the quarterback and the quarterback coaching staff, or perhaps the O-line. But whatever the case may be, there was always at least, if not every year, I'm going to say at least every other year, there was always a story in the local newspaper, or many journalists would post about quarterback controversies. There has always been a plague, if you will, of quarterback controversies when it comes to the Washington football team, who is now named the Washington Commanders. Now, the subpoena again was issued for Daniel Snyder, who is the owner and has been for several years now, to testify before the House Oversight and Reform Committee. However, Mr. Snyder has decided to refuse the acceptance of the service of a subpoena. Now, serving civil documents myself, I know that subpoenas normally should be served personally on that individual. However, in some cases, the individual's attorney can accept. But in this particular case, because Snyder decided to refuse service, the service couldn't even be effectuated on his attorney, because the attorney, according to this article, is out of the country. Now, again, I'm not sure how the politics or funds may be going as far as this particular case is concerned, but I do know that there are cases where service, especially during the pandemic, and in some agencies now, service can be effectuated via electronic means, which simply means email. So I'm not sure how being out of the country was able to fly. But again, we're talking the upper echelon. So again, Carolyn Maloney, Democrat out of New York, who is the committee's chairwoman, wanted to issue the subpoena to Snyder to compel him to give a deposition this week. But again, as I said, according to the story, which is actually posted on my description and can be found at the link, was stymied because Daniel Snyder refused to accept service for it. The article goes on to state that a person, and they did not indicate who, they just stopped at a person close to Snyder, told the Washington Post that his lawyer could not accept service of a subpoena because she, meaning Daniel Snyder's attorney, was out of the country. Then it also goes to say that both sides spoke in reference to the subpoena and the other issues surrounding the delivery of the subpoena, but no resolution has been made as of yet. Now, last week, according to the story in Patch, the committee accused Snyder, Daniel Snyder, who again is the owner, and here in the article, they're calling him the co-owner, but we've all known him to be the owner, of conducting what they have coined as a shadow investigation to, again, this is according to Patch, where they've accused Snyder of conducting a shadow investigation, which was to discredit those who were accusing him and the organization for causing a toxic workplace environment. Now, there have been many stories and scandals in the past, and I believe, God, his name just slipped my mind that fast. I can see his face so clearly. Oh my God, it might be in the article, but I think it wasn't a member of the coaching staff. He was a part of the front office, but his name came up a lot as far as the scandal and how can I put it? Intimate relation, so to speak. So this is what basically all of this is about, addressing those allegations. And if you do a Google search, you will find quite a few stories that even depict cheerleaders who have accused certain members of the organization of certain advances. But those concerns and allegations were unfortunately swept under the rug. So, further, according to Patch, the article goes on that the committee will not be deterred from obtaining Daniel Snyder's testimony. And also, it states that they will remain committed to ensuring the transparency of the toxic workplace culture of the Washington Commander, which again was formerly known as the Washington football team and had been known for decades as the Washington Redskins. But because of so many complaints that the name was offensive to Native Americans, they unveiled the new name, being the Washington Commanders, and that happened earlier this year, 2022. So it seems like they're getting down to trying to force Snyder to answer questions in reference to the allegations. Now, back in 2009, there was a story in the Washington Post of again, I will use the word intimate assault allegation against Snyder. And reportedly, there was a $1.6 million settlement. $1.6 million settlement. That's a lot of money. And that came out of a news report that surfaced in April of 2009. We are now in June of 2022. And again, as I said, these scandals and stories are not new. I believe these old stories are being catapulted to the forefront due to the issuance of the subpoena. However, as I stated, Snyder has refused to accept it himself, and his lawyer is unable to be served because, according to reports, she's out of the country. But again, as I said, when the pandemic started, a lot of these cases, and I know for a fact that some you could serve a document via electronic means, which is basically through email. You could get a digital return of service quite easy. That's what many do now in this hybrid environment where many people can perform their duties at home. But legally, that's still a gray area where some documents, such as subpoenas, in a lot of jurisdictions, the rules are they need to be served upon that individual person. However, in some instances, it is acceptable for the attorney to accept service on their behalf. But in the Daniel Snyder case, which is the latest one, which is considered breaking news as far as football news is concerned, his lawyer is stated to be out of the country. So that puts a little monkey wrench into the mix. Now, according to the 2009 incident, it states that a woman alleges that the assault occurred on a flight back from a work trip from Las Vegas on one of the team's private planes. The story further goes to read that the woman, who was not named in the report, claimed that Snyder asked her for, I'll just say, intimate relations, groped her, and attempted to remove her clothing. So I will repeat that because I did not know this. It says that a woman claims or alleges that on a flight back from a work trip in Las Vegas on one of the team's private planes, and we all know teams do have their own private planes, that even though the woman wasn't named in the report, which is irrelevant right now, that the claims were that the owner, Daniel Snyder, allegedly asked her for intimate relations. Also, the woman alleges he groped her, and the woman also alleges that he tried to remove her clothing. So, the 2009 case, as I mentioned, was settled in the amount of $1.6 million. And this was what the team agreed on. Again, as a result of the intimate assault charges that were allegations of Daniel Snyder alleging to have asked a woman for intimate relations, groped her, and attempted to remove her clothing, ended in a settlement which was agreed to by the team of $1.6 million. Snyder, of course, denied those allegations, and a team investigation accused the woman of lying in the attempt to extort money from Snyder and also the team. So again, reports state that Snyder denied this allegation and accused that the woman was lying, and this was just an attempt for her to extort money from both Snyder and the team. However, Snyder and the Washington franchise decided to agree to a confidential settlement. Keep that in mind now. They attempted and agreed to settle with the woman via a confidential settlement if she agreed not to go public with the allegation. Sounds almost like hush money. She isn't named. However, the team agreed to pay $1.6 million, but the caveat was that the agreement was for a confidential settlement, and she had to agree not to go public with the allegation. Further, Snyder and the Washington, now known as the Commanders, are currently the subject of an investigation by the House Committee and Oversight and Reform. Members of the committee have voiced their concerns about the franchise's workplace and culture and the NFL's response. And again, this should not be new to anyone who has followed the NFL and also the Washington football team, now known as the Washington Commanders. I don't know if I'll ever get used to saying that name, but again, there has been a history of rumors, scandals, you name it, that have swirled over this Washington team for years now, and this is just the latest. Again, Republican Carolyn Maloney, who is the chairwoman of the Committee on Oversight and Reform, shared a memo that detailed Snyder's efforts to discredit victims. Again, this is all according to the article found in Patch. Further, it states that a news release from the committee claimed Snyder launched a shadow investigation to attempt to influence the NFL's investigation into the Commanders' workplace and culture. Snyder, according to the story, agreed to step away from day-to-day operations of the Commanders last summer. Okay, that's something new to me. Again, the story says that Snyder agreed to step away from the day-to-day operations of the Commanders last summer after the NFL fined the team $10 million after the investigation into its workplace and culture. So again, this scandal is not new to Washington. And again, those who may follow this team and has followed the team, and there are still many diehard Washington fans out there, they know that this team has been riddled with allegations such as this scandal. Again, they have been coined as the quarterback killer because many of the quarterbacks did not last long, and some of them suffered, I would think, for all intents and purposes, career-ending injuries. And they were quite young at that time. So, again, controversy has not been a distant relative to the Washington team. Further, as far as the investigation portion goes, according to Patch, members of the House Committee on Oversight and Reform have requested more information about the results on the NFL's investigation, but the league has not fully cooperated. Now, I'm not quite sure what they mean that the team has not fully cooperated, but I would guess by that statement that the committee has not received all of the information that they have requested and are expecting to move forward for possibly additional other charges. Hey there, people from Facebook. Good morning. Good morning. And yes, I am talking about the Washington football team, formerly known as, no, they're currently known as the Washington Commanders, formerly known as the Washington football team. And again, sports fans or Washington fans all remember them as the Redskins, but after year-long debates and some protests actually that the name was offensive to Native Americans, they have decided earlier this year to unveil a new name. Hey there, people from Facebook. Hey there, Hardish. How are you? Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you are. Welcome. Welcome. But yes, thank you for the hearts and thank you for the likes. I appreciate it, Facebook, and whoever's there from YouTube. But again, the article goes on to read the league has not fully cooperated. So again, the only out I can see with that means that they have not obtained all of the information that they've requested or needed to go further. And lastly, the committee states, according to the Patch article, that Mr. Snyder and Mr. Goodell, who everyone should know is the commish or the commissioner, need to appear before the committee to address these issues and answer their questions about the persuasive workplace misconduct at the Washington Commanders and how the NFL addressed these issues. So it appears that the Committee for Oversight and Reform is on their heels. They are truly adamant about having Mr. Snyder accept this subpoena and move forward into their investigation on allegations of a toxic work environment and culture within the new named Washington Commanders football team. And again, this story was last updated around 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Monday. So I am sure more information is forthcoming. And once I hear it, I will pass it on. So if you have any comments, concerns, agreements, disagreements, please feel free to leave them in the comment section. And if you have any questions, you can leave those as well, as I will respond to all when I see them. Thank you for those that did come on this late night, or perhaps early morning to listen to this broadcast in reference to the owner of the now named Washington Commanders has refused to accept a subpoena that has compelled him to answer questions that settle around allegations of a toxic workplace environment and culture there at the Washington Commanders, formerly known as the Washington football team and formerly known as the Redskins, who again, after years and years of debates and protests, because the name to many, especially Native Americans, was deemed as offensive. And earlier this year, they unveiled a new name and a new uniform, as a matter of fact. That's an extra for you. And that new name is the Washington Commanders. Again, the link and story can be found in my description that you can read yourself at your leisure if you desire to do so. But that was just a brief of the article that can be found on patch.com. Again, the description is in my link. And again, thank you to those who did tune in. You could have been anywhere else, but you stopped in here for a little while. So I appreciate that. And tomorrow, it is my hope that I can get to the story I really wanted to speak about, which is the trafficking of the Ukrainian refugees and trafficking, period. So with that, I wish you all a peaceful, comfortable, and pleasant night and or morning, depending upon where you are on the globe. And I will see and or speak to you again virtually really soon. Night, night for now.